Hey everyone, it's Rob. Thanks again for joining us. I'm going to be joined soon by my colleague Danny Hall. But as you're probably aware, today we're holding an emergency live stream because the situation in the West Bank has become absolutely dire. We know that most of you watching are familiar to some extent with what's happening, and I'm going to be joined in a few minutes by another colleague and a good friend, Mercy Aiken, who has been in the West Bank for the past 6 weeks. We're going to get an update from her, and many of you know Mercy, and we also suspect that you're probably familiar with the situation in the West Bank. But what we also want to do in this live stream is something that we want to make this something that you can share with others, so that many who do not know or understand what's happening you can share with them. And so we're going to try to frame this conversation a little bit. So let me kind of begin by framing the conversation if I can. So let me begin by here's a quote from Mercy, her wonderful book that we'll talk about as we proceed. But if the gospel is truly good news, it says, Bashara says, then it must be good news for everyone. I'd like to ask the rest of the Christians in the world, where is the good news for us Palestinians? We've all heard for the last 21 months about the destruction in Gaza. And unfortunately, the situation in the West Bank is basically almost as horrific. Now, the West Bank, if you're not aware, was a boundary formed in 1948 when Israel became a nation. It became under the control of Jordan and then the Gaza Strip, of course, where a lot of the refugees settled on the west coast of the Mediterranean, the east coast of the Mediterranean Sea, but the west coast of the land of Israel. 1967, Israel became the occupying power. They invaded, gained control of the West Bank and of Gaza, and they have been since 1967 the occupying power in the land. Well, what's happened now is that with the world's attention on Gaza, the IDF and radical settlers have taken advantage of this and brought chaos to the West Bank and the Palestinians. They are facing unlivable conditions. One of the things that happened is that Israel has shut off water and access to water for most of the Palestinians. And this is in the West Bank. And one of the things, if you go to the West Bank, you're going to see these villages. And if you see villages with these water tanks on the roof, you know it's a Palestinian village. If you see a village that doesn't have a water tank on the roof, then you know it's an Israeli settlement. That's how you distinguish between the two. Israeli settlements have free access to water. And these are settlers who live in the West Bank. Whereas this is a picture of a Palestinian home, and they don't have access to water. So Israel turns the water on, they fill up their tanks, and then they have to ration the water again until it gets turned back on. They don't know when it gets turned back on. And basically since October of 2023, the water has been turned on, basically seldom has it been turned on. Now, in addition, tourism is basically non-existent, and that's one of the primary features of the Palestinian economy. As a result, the Palestinian economy is all but collapsed. Even for those that have jobs, they're often unable to get to them because of the massive increase in road closures. These road closures have popped up all over the West Bank. There were several hundred of them before October of 2023. Now there are hundreds more. And this is, again, Israeli checkpoints, road closures in the West Bank, so the Palestinians can't go from one city to another city, one place to another place within the West Bank itself. These checkpoints have created massive traffic jams, massive congestions. So this one here is from a good friend of ours, Osama Nikolai. This picture was taken in January, and it takes 5 hours or more sometimes. Who knows when it's even going to open? And then if the checkpoint opens, it takes hours and hours to get through. People can't get to work. They can't get to their jobs. It's unsustainable. And of course, the schools are closed as well. Now, in addition to this, since 1967, when Israel became the occupying power, what you're looking at on this map here, I know it's hard to see, but the green dots in the West Bank represent Israeli settler cities. Some of them are massive cities. Some of them are 60,000 or more inhabitants. These are Israelis moving their own people into the West Bank. There are over 700 to 750,000 Israeli residents that now live in the West Bank. Here's a picture of an Israeli settlement. These are massive cities built all over the West Bank. And in order to have these cities built, of course, they have to steal or confiscate Palestinian lands. And this is where the major conflict between Israelis and Palestinians happens, is in the West Bank between these settlers and the Palestinians. Now, the settlements often confiscate Palestinian lands. This actually is a picture that I took myself. Mercy might know exactly where this was taken from, but it's on the roof of one of the homes in the Ida refugee camp. And you're looking out over the wall around Bethlehem, and you see this wall built. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not on the screen, but there's a wall built right up against the city of Bethlehem. Out in the distance over there is an Israeli settlement. These walls, security walls they're called, were to protect Israelis from Palestinians because, well, you stole our land to build your city there. That's where the violence is going to be. But you can see this wall is actually built against the Palestinian city of Bethlehem, and it confiscates all the land on the other side, which is their agricultural lands. That increases as well the economic hardships upon the Palestinians also. Now, in addition, much of the violence is through settler violence. Palestinians aren't innocent by any means, but the settlers are often violent. Now, some of the settlers that live in the West Bank are simply economic settlers. They live there because it's cheap housing, but some of them are ideological settlers. They believe this is their land and they have a right to it. And you can see the Israeli soldiers, the IDF soldiers, IDF stands for Israeli Defense Forces, who were just standing there watching. The IDF soldiers' job is to protect the settlers. It is not to make sure justice happens. If the settler does something wrong, they're almost never punished for their violence. Here's another picture. And then in October 2023, when Hamas did their horrific terrorist attack in Israel, Ben-Gvir, who's in the middle of this picture with the blue shirt there, who is Israel's Minister of National Security, began handing out weapons to the settlers. This is a picture that happened, I think, October, November 2023. So the settlers were already violent, and now they're armed and extremely violent, and they can act almost without impunity. So what's happening in the West Bank now is these armed settlers are increasing the terror upon the Palestinians. Israel's choked the Palestinian territory with no water, food, low incomes, jobs, and it has made it an incredibly oppressive situation for the Palestinians. So life in the West Bank has become dire or even unlivable. Mercy used the word genocide to me the other day. We'll see if she wants to use that again. But before we go any further, let me go ahead and bring on Danny Hall. Danny is a colleague and a good friend and a wonderful server here at Determined Truth. Danny, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Even it's a tough subject to get into, but I can't wait to hear what Mercy has to share with us.
Yeah. So let's bring on Mercy now. Mercy's in Amman, Jordan. We know that the connection and the Wi-Fi is not as good there, but we thank you so much for joining us, Mercy, and it's so good to have you with us. All right.
Well,
thank you. It's great to be here.
So Mercy is a cross-cultural advocate, a bridge builder and storyteller, an author, activist, and pilgrimage leader with years of experience living in the Middle East, particularly Palestine and Israel. She's passionate about the flourishing of Eastern churches, Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Her peace building is centered in, but not limited to, the Holy Land. She organizes and leads unique pilgrimages to the Holy Land designed to foster empathy, understanding, and a more embodied expression of our faith, particularly in the context of peace building. Excuse me. Excuse me. Mercy is convinced that the more we learn about each other, the more we'll be guided by curiosity and empathy rather than fear and suspicion. Mercy is the co-author of In the Dark Streets Shining. Let me bring up a copy of that book, at least in the top corner there, and I'll bring up an image of it later for us also. And by the way, this book that she wrote with Bashara Awad, the founder of Bethlehem Bible College, it's kind of Bashara's memoir to the little-known story of Palestinian Christians as they experienced life there through one man. And if you are just getting started on this issue, this is one of the best places to start. For years, I would tell people, Mercy, read Elias Shakur's Blood Brothers, but to kind of get started on this issue. But now I say, no, read Mercy's book, In the Dark Streets, Yet in the Dark Streets Shining, and then you can go to Gary Burge's book, and some other books as well. But Mercy, thank you so much for joining us. So,
yeah, it's just great to have you here, Mercy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Well, say some of our listeners or viewers don't know much about you. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to your current trip to the Middle East?
Yeah, so I think Rob gave a pretty thorough introduction to me, so I won't say anything in addition to that, at least right now. But I had come over here to lead a pilgrimage. It was to be a solidarity learning pilgrimage with the people who are suffering in the land. We were mainly going to visit places in the West Bank, but also along the Gaza border. So we were going to visit with Christians, Muslims, and Jews who have all been suffering since October 7th. And I arrived on...
Mercy, we thought this might happen. Yeah, we're having some trouble with your internet. So Mercy might just go dark
Yeah.
with sound only here, and you have to look at Danny and I's ugly faces for
Yeah.
just to make sure that we have good sound there. So thank you, Mercy. And those of you guys that are watching, thank you so much for watching
Can you
live.
hear me
Feel free
now?
to put your comments. We can. Feel free to put your comments in the comments box, and we'll get to any questions if we can. But we can't hear you, Mercy. Go ahead and continue.
Oops.
I think she's there. Let's see. Mercy?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Hopefully this will work with my camera off.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the Wi-Fi is not the best here. Anyway, when I arrived, can you hear
All
me?
right, so
or is it
we
going
can.
out again?
It went
Goes
out
in
a
and
little
out.
bit. We need your the prayer warriors that are watching live to pray, and then
Yes, prayer warriors,
technology will help us.
get on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So essentially the war started, and so we had to cancel the pilgrimage. And
Mhm.
so I just decided to stay in Bethlehem because we were essentially locked in. We couldn't leave, like the airport was closed and we were basically stuck there. So I stayed in Bethlehem for about 10 days before everything opened up. And then I began to go out and just kind of explore the area, visit friends, and see what was happening on the West Bank. So that's what I was doing there.
All right. And Mercy, one of the first places that you went to was Daoud, Nassar, and Nassar's farm. I'm going to have some slides here a little bit as well. Go ahead. I'm sure you can see the screen. Tell us a little bit about Daoud and your trip to Daoud's farm.
Okay. So Nassar Farm is an area right outside of Bethlehem. It's a Christian farm. They've had property ownership deeds that go back to the Ottoman period of time, so over 100 years old. And there's that's a beautiful map showing all of these settlements that are built around the farm. And the settlers really want this property where the farm is. And so they've been intimidating them and fighting with them for decades. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
we
Yeah,
can.
we hear you fine.
I'm afraid I'm going to be talking and no one can hear anything.
Yeah, we'll let you know. Well,
Okay.
hopefully.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So to enter the Nassar Farm property, the settlers had blocked their road, which is on their property, exactly, with boulders like this. And so it used to, when we went to visit them, we had to park our cars behind these boulders, climb over them, and then walk down the dirt road to enter their farm, all of which is on their property. In fact, the land that is even below the dirt road is still their property, even though it's not within the walled area of the farm.
Right.
But a few years ago, the settlers. Can you hear me?
I don't know that, yeah, I can. I don't know that you can see my cursor. Is that correct, Danny? You can't see my cursor. But the road up here at the top right of the screen goes from the main Route 6. This is the road where the boulders were placed, and that road is no longer accessible. That's what Mercy's about to tell us now. As a result, the Nassars had to take the road over on the left side of the screen, the kind of the squiggly road down the hill, and go all the way around, trying to get to Bethlehem. They were doing everything they could. And notice that Daoud's farm, Daoud's vineyard, is on the top of a hill. And so all the settlements around it make this particular home, or make this particular land, 100 dunams, very central. And that's something that they've just been trying to confiscate since the 1990s. Daoud and his family have been in court for a long, long time. And one last thing, Mercy, Daoud's family, as you know, has property deeds to this land. They bought it rightfully during the Ottoman Empire, 1916. They have the paperwork saying we own it. That paperwork was then transferred to the Jordanian control in 1948. They got it re-registered saying we own this land. And then since 1967, when Israel's occupation, they've tried to re-register it as well. So go ahead, Mercy. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that backdrop. And I absolutely love that map. Maybe you could pull up that map again. Okay. And if we haven't stressed the fact, this is a very strong Christian family that is living here on Nassar Farm. They're very, very strong Christians and have been for generations. So if you look, you see Beit Jala up in the top left-hand corner. Now to get to their farm, you can no longer take Route 60. You have to drive through this little village of Husan, and then you have to drive Lean, and then you come around to the bottom because this other road that comes around on the right-hand side is completely blocked off. So as we began to drive out to the farm and we left Beit Jala, we immediately came to this big yellow gate over the road, which was open at the time. And they said, oh, all of these gates have gone in since the Iran war. So literally, like after I got there, the Israelis added numerous gates on top of like the 60 gates that were already in the Bethlehem municipality, which is broad and it includes a lot of little villages aside from Bethlehem. 60 different gates were already there. More were added. As we drove then through Husan and Nahalin, we encountered numerous gates, 3 different gates where this road can just be closed. So you can see that every little village can be locked in essentially with no way to drive out of the village. And even spaces of the road in between are blocked. So we came up to the farm the long way and parked there, and we went inside, and then they said, we want to show you what's happening here just in the past like week. So what I'm telling you is very, very fresh news concerning what is going on at Nasser Farm. So Amal, whose name means hope, she is one of the sisters who lives on the farm with her brothers and works the land. And she took my friend Jennifer and I around the border of the farm to show us many, many new little small settlements, like little trailers that have gone up. And as we came down to one corner of the land, we saw that there was a little Israeli watchtower that was built there right on the farm. Like right where those boulders were that we used to climb over to enter the property. So it would be like on the right-hand side. There's literally a watchtower, like where a soldier can sit there and survey the property. And there's very large poles, like as tall as light posts that you would see in a city with surveillance cameras that turn, you know, a full circle of degrees. And numerous of these tall poles with these surveillance cameras are placed all around the outside of the farm now. So as we were walking up and I saw this watchtower, I said, isn't that on your property right there? And Amal said, yes, that is our property. And right on the watchtower was a big Israeli flag. And just on a little hill right behind it was a new micro settlement of a little white trailer. So when you see those, that's the beginning of another new community. So they're like the seeds of new settlements. And so I very discreetly pulled out my phone and I took a picture, which wasn't very good. It was through the trees. It was kind of blurry, but just showing this watchtower and the flag. And within a minute from the little settlement, a Jeep comes barreling down the road very quickly towards us. So Amal says, turn around, walk away slowly, don't run, don't, just act casual and begin to walk away. And she whispered to us, and don't say anything if they say anything to you, just remain silent. So Jennifer and I started walking away, and immediately out from the Jeep jumped 2 men dressed in army clothing. One of them had a black mask over his face so you could only see his eyes. They both had big, huge guns strapped over their shoulders. And they start yelling to Jennifer and I, come here, come here, come here. And of course we did not. We just kept slowly walking away and they're yelling out, where are you from? What are your names? Let us see your passports. Come here, come here. And we just discreetly kept edging away. Our hearts were pounding. And we just kind of ignored them and kept slowly walking away. Amal stayed there. She's tough and used to dealing with them. And she kind of talked with them. She said that after we left, one of them jumped over the rock wall, a low rock wall, right into their property, as though he was about to come after us and arrest us. But something changed his mind, and I believe it was because Jennifer and I prayed. We were like, Lord, distract them with something else or confuse them or let them feel it's not worth it to come after us, And so for whatever reason, they did not come after us. They left the property. So we got back up where the family was, and there were a few other international volunteers who were staying there with them. And then they began to explain to us how dangerous the situation is right now and how fully they are relying on international volunteers being there as a witness, just as one small thing that might intimidate the settlers from enacting complete violence against them if there are international people there watching. And they said, it is like we are in an emergency situation. We need to have people out here year round, 24/7. Like we can't have a day go by now without international presence. And the more, the better. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation, is to issue this call out far and wide. If anyone is listening, please add Nasser Farm to your itinerary if you're planning to come to the Holy Land. And please even consider spending the night out there. Dawood asked us if all pilgrimages from now on, because he knows I bring them, and he said, if you would be willing to have your groups spend the night with us, this could help. Like the more they see large groups coming and going, it will show them that they cannot normalize this behavior so easily against us. And then they told us a story, and I actually went and met this man. There was another American out there volunteering a few days before us. Now, bear in mind that this watchtower had gone up just in the past week before I got there. So after the Iran war, I mean, this has been up literally probably 2 weeks as I'm talking to you now, because this was about a week ago that this happened. So around like the day that that tower and flag went up, this other American volunteer who was there was pruning olive branches down around the property, and he had headphones on. So he was listening to music while he was doing it. So he did not, and he also, like me, took a little photo of what he saw there. And because he had headphones on, he did not hear the Israeli army or the soldiers. I don't think this is really the IDF. I think these guys are part of the militias that have been armed by Ben Gvir. So they're like pseudo IDF, and they have a amount of government legitimacy, but they're not actually the Israeli army. He said suddenly he looked up and there were all these guns pointed right in his face, and he was stunned and shocked and scared, and he had nowhere to go. Like he couldn't edge away the way that Jennifer and I did. So they blindfolded him, they zip tied his hands behind his back, they made him get into the Jeep, and they took him up the hill to their little trailer micro settlement, where they made him kneel on the floor facing the wall for several hours. And while he was facing the wall, he heard them talking about Barcelona and Madrid and talking about sports. And he realized that these are just young guys, about 20 years old. And they were laughing and taking selfies with him while he's in this vulnerable position. He could see out of the corner of his blindfold because he edged it up discreetly with his knee. So he had like a partial view out of one eye. After a few hours, they took him to another place in the settlement. And then they told him they were going to interrogate him. And they loaded him up into the Jeep again. But this time, instead, they just took him out into the middle of nowhere. And they took him out into the wilderness, essentially. And out of the corner of his eye, he saw them pull out a big knife. And he thought, oh my gosh, this is it. And instead they cut the zip ties, and he said, took off his blindfold, and he said, where am I? And they said, you love Arabs. You're in Arab land. Go find some Arabs that you love. Get out of here. And so he just took off walking, and he came into the village of Nahalin, which you can see right here on the map. And from there, he got a taxi and went back up to the Nasser farm, where they had been terrified and so terribly worried about him because they saw that he'd been taken off by the settlers. So, and to get him also, they had used wire cutters and cut through the wire fence on the Nasser farm and just boldly walked onto the inner sanctum of their property, because they're already on their property, but they came into the inner sanctum where all the buildings are and their houses, their homes and everything. So this incident made me realize how very, very vulnerable our friends at Nasser Farm are.
Yeah.
And I left there with this sinking feeling that truly, if there are not international people there to help keep an eye on things, our friends could be murdered by these settlers, or beat up badly, or arrested and hauled off, disappeared, and no one would know where they are. So they're that vulnerable. And I should also mention that on the other side of the property, there are new settlement, there are new also trailers that are going up very, very quickly, right on the other side of the fence. So these aren't even big houses. They're just like trailers. And while I was there, just during the course of the day, walls, and roofs, like they were going, yes, they look kind of like that. And they were lined up right against the fence. So we are very worried because these are going up so quickly, and because they are right basically against the fence of the inner sanctum of their property. that things are really going to heat up probably in a week or two when people move into these settlements, these houses. Wow. And I should also point out that there is tons of empty land that is still around there, rolling hills. There is no reason to build these homes right against their fence. They are not in any of the settlements proper. These homes that are being built are not attached to anything. They're simply there to intimidate and to claim property. I found out also just the day before I left Palestine, this was like 3 days ago, I was talking with a friend who lives in a settlement, but he's like sympathetic and he tries to work for peace. And I was reaching out to him because I'm like, please do something to help. And he mentioned something offhand, but he said it's a rule amongst the settlements that if Palestinians can't have land within 200 feet of a settlement. So I have a feeling that this might be why they built these homes right up against the fence, because now they're going to use the argument by saying you can't have your farm here within 200 feet of our homes. Right. So they're going to encroach in and try to take another big chunk of the property. And this might be the legal, quote unquote, legal argument that they try to use to oust the Nassers from their farm. So I just want to issue this as an urgent call for prayer, an urgent call to come and visit, an urgent call to spread awareness and to reach out to your legislators. The Nassar family has been something that many Christian organizations have continued to put before the United States Congress, and this is something that we need to put before them urgently.
Yeah, I last saw Daoud, I think last March, I think it was, in Washington, D.C. He was going to speak before Congress. Daoud's been battling this for 35 years now in the courts, in Israeli courts, and he's had a lot of international support, and that's what's been able to keep this going. And Danny, I don't think you've ever met Daoud before, but one of the things I do when I tell people about Daoud, I say, there's a story in the book of Acts chapter 6, with Stephen arguing with the religious leaders and the synagogue leaders and synagogue officials, and I think Paul is one of those synagogue officials that he's arguing with because they're from Tarsus and Cilicia, so that has to include Paul. And it says, but they couldn't keep up with his wisdom, and his face looked like that of an angel. And of course, the next chapter, they stone Stephen and kill him. And so in the midst of this venom, in the midst of this hatred, in the midst of this controversy, his face looked like that of an angel. And that's Daoud. I mean, this is the godliest man I've ever met in my life. In the midst of adversity, this stone he has, when you walk up to his property, it's in Arabic, English, and German. He studied in Germany. We refuse to be enemies. And you hear his stories, and Mercy knows them probably even better than I do, of his interactions with Israeli settlers and his interactions with IDF soldiers. This man reflects Christ and the gospel more than anyone I've ever met in my lifetime, outside the biblical stories, and I never met those people in my lifetime anyway. So, and his family, his wife and his brother and sister are just unbelievable people. And you can see these are the settlements around his property. So it's just unbelievable. So, yeah.
Mercy, obviously this is an incredibly poignant case study in what's happening. Can you, for our listeners, perhaps don't know the larger story of the West Bank, their vulnerability over time, can you give some context for what's happening now for people that Gaza has dominated the news, and that most of what's happening in the West Bank happens out of sight for most people in the U.S.? Can you give us a little bit of a context of the overall situation in the West Bank, and maybe a snippet of the history, how we got to where we are?
I will say that since even before October 7th, there's been a lot of talk amongst the Israeli settler movement that they want to annex the West Bank officially to Israel. And many of them already consider it like de facto annexed. Even today, there was a vote in the Knesset whether to annex to annex the West Bank, and it passed by a dramatic majority. I don't think this is official law, but it was maybe a feeler for passing it, and it passed like massively. So they want to have assert domination, and they consider all of this land theirs by biblical divine right or by heritage. And they consider all the Palestinians who've been living there for generations, millennia even before them, to be like intruders who don't actually belong there and don't have a right to live there. There's a lot we could talk about that. Sure. But I I just want to say that everything that we will talk about today needs to be understood in light of that bigger picture. It's not just that this one farm is being attacked, or that this one village is being attacked, or that this one Bedouin village was forcibly emptied, or that this guy was locked up and thrown in prison, or that this guy was beat to death, such as the 20-year-old American citizen who was beat to death by settlers while I was in the land. This is a larger pattern, and it's part of a larger strategy to which Israel is moving very, very rapidly right now, like with lightning speed. And I say this simply because of the changes that I saw happen in the mere 6 weeks that I was there, and the ground that was rapidly taken during the Iran war, the things that changed just during that time. Palestinians are essentially being squeezed out of the majority of the West Bank, which is Area C. I think you showed a map of that. And they're being forced. I began to see the whole picture is that there are gates. Palestinians are forced to live within prisons, like a prison, inside a prison, inside a prison, because of all of the gates. So every village and town and city can be locked in by every single exit point. And then the roads outside of that, they can all be locked. And then every other road that you could think of, they all have gates on them now, at least one, sometimes 2 or 3. And this is all inside the area of the separation wall that is already locked off and separated off. So it really, when I began to see, like, my friends are literally living inside a prison, inside a prison, inside a prison. So that's one thing that I really want people to understand what is happening right now. There's no freedom of movement. You touched on this, Rob. But while I was there, I myself was locked inside of Bethlehem for many days. I hiked to the little village of Batir, which got locked in while I was there. We could not leave, nor could my friend come and visit. I talked with many people who went to Ramallah for the day, for example, and came back to Bethlehem and could not enter Bethlehem because Bethlehem was locked up. And so there's precious little gas. There's also very little gasoline for vehicles. And so imagine, taking your precious little gas, driving on a trip you need to, and coming home and not even being able to go home. You have to drive around the city from one area to another, trying to find a way to enter the municipal area. Palestinians now have a little app that they have to have on their phone that shows, I think you have an image of it, that shows all of the gates around Bethlehem with red light. This is a long scrolling image. It goes on and on and on. My friend that was showing it to me. The red are gates that are closed. The green are gates that are open. And the red and green images are constantly changing. So you may say, okay, this gate is open here, I'll head there. And along the way, lo and behold, it turns red. So now you drive away, and maybe gate that you were stuck at, you're driving away from it, and suddenly it turned green. Now you could turn around and go back to it. So you see how crazy this is making people, because there's no logic or rhyme or reason. There is so much randomness applied to this that literally when I was there, I was talking to friends in Ramallah, I was talking to friends in other villages, and we could not visit each other. They said, I'm afraid to take the risk of driving to visit you. And I said, I'm also afraid to take the risk to come and visit. And I also want to just quickly mention the complete strategy of economic strangulation, which you mentioned some of, Rob, at the beginning. But I really want to make this clear to people how complete is the economic strangulation, so that when we talk about unemployment being high in Bethlehem or other areas of the West Bank, it's not that people are lazy. It's not that people are not well educated, and just can't get a job or whatever. There is literally, it is so completely strangled. So I will list a few points very quickly. One being the UNRWA, the United Nations Refugee organization that serves Palestinian refugees, to which the United States cut the vast majority of the funding since October 7th. Also USAID, which the United States cut, I think, all or the vast majority of that funding. These are services that provided many crucial services to Palestinian refugees. It employed many of them. It offered financial assistance to them. It provided school, medical care, things like that. So all of this is extremely truncated right now. Like it's just a drop from what it used to be. That's one thing. You've also got all the Palestinians who were fired from their jobs who worked on the Israeli side of the wall in Jerusalem. Maybe they worked in construction, or maybe they worked at a Palestinian restaurant for their cousin who lives in Jerusalem. Whatever it may be, they all lost their jobs except for 3% of the people who used to cross over into Israel on a daily basis for work. So that's a huge chunk of unemployment. Then you've got the tourism, which that affects everyone from taxi drivers, hotels, restaurants, gift shop owners. What else is there? There's a handful of other things, but it is so complete now that there's like barely any way for people to scrape together a living. And so people are so financially desperate. These are people who, whatever finances they might have like managed to save, they already used that during COVID because COVID was so extremely difficult for them. So they have no fat left, that they can live off of. They've already scraped the bottom of the barrel. And as I've been talking with people in the refugee camps, they said that even people in the camps who used to be wealthier and would be the kind of people who would donate when others were hungry in the camp, these people themselves are now in the breadlines. So that is the larger overall context. There's many other points I could add, but I think just by seeing those two things, you can understand how impossible it is to actually remain and live a viable life of any kind. Oh, here's another economic strangulation. People with lands. Their lands are being confiscated by settlers. If you used to be able to go out and harvest olives and at least sell some of the extra olive oil, you cannot do that now. Or if you had invested in some property outside of Bethlehem, and now there's a new settlement going up right beside it, your property has completely dropped in value. No one's going to buy it from you, and you can't access it. You've essentially lost that investment. Right. So that's another way that the economic strangulation is going on. It is full.
Mercy,
it is complete.
Go ahead.
No, that's all I'll say on that.
I was going to say, we did a 5-part live stream series. It's on the Determined Truth YouTube playlist. Under the playlist, Introduction to the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, there's actually 6 videos. They're about 30 to 35 minutes long, each of them, and it's kind of an introduction to what's happening. There's about 3 videos that give like a 100-year history from 1900 through 48 through 67 to the present day. There's a couple of videos that say this is the Israeli issues that they're concerned with, the justice concerns that they have, security, etc. And then this is the Palestinian concerns. And one of the things that's interesting about this is that you have 2 narratives. I mean, you have the Israeli narrative, their side of the story, and you have the Palestinian side of the story. And by no means are we presenting the Palestinian side of the story and therefore we're anti-Israel. We're simply saying, no, this is what's going on in Palestine. But it's really become clear in the last 21 months since the October attack in 2023 that the Israeli narrative is actually, it's being implemented. And part of their narrative was to get control of all the land for their own safety and security. Really quickly here, but Jabotinsky, one of the early Christians, one of the early Jewish Zionists in the 1930s said, if we're going to take this land to establish a nation state, the people that live there are going to resist. We have to take all of the land or we will constantly have a problem. And so you see this conflict bearing fruit now when they didn't take all the land because the United Nations didn't give them all the land in 48. And so the 67 occupations seem to be, well, they're trying to get more land or not. And now that they clearly are. And again, this is simply not good for Israel. This is not good for anyone because violence begets violence. And so I think that's an important part. Mercy, you also went to Taipei. Yeah. So Taipei, and Danny, I don't know if you ever met, but I have a friend up in the Bay Area that actually is from Taipei. It's the only only fully Christian village left in the Palestinian lands. A lot of them are Muslims. And because of that, the Muslims don't drink alcohol. Taipei is well known for its Taipei beer. And so that came under attack recently. Mike Huckabee even went to Taipei and began, hey, we got to stop this. I did a thing the other day, said, Huckabee can say all he wants. Nothing's going to happen. The United States will only make a show of like, hey, we got to make sure it's something, but they never, ever have done anything of consequence imposing upon Israel, upon Netanyahu for settlements or anything like that at all. But so Mercy, tell us about your time in Taipei. Are you there?
Yeah. So while I think it just cut off, but it came on again. While I was there, Taipei was attacked several times. And so I thought I got to get over there and see what's going on.
Are they attacked from settlers or directly from the IDF?
They're from settlers.
Okay.
Settlers. So as Rob mentioned, Taipei is the last village that is 100% Christian. This village used to be called Ephrath in the Bible, and it's where Jesus retreated after he raised Lazarus from the dead, and people were crowding around him in Bethany. So he went over to this village and he stayed here for a night or two. And this village is so proud of it. They've got a big statue of Jesus in the center of town with the reference of like Luke 11 or whatever it is when Jesus stayed there. And I asked my friend, like, why is this whole village still Christian? And he said, I think they're just so proud of the fact that Jesus stayed here that they can't, like, none of them converted to Islam. Like, they're so proud of this fact. So they have like hundreds of dunams, this village, of olive trees all around their village. It's always been kind of a sleepy little village. They've never really had any rough interactions with Israelis or settlers per se. Well, they probably have through the years, but nothing of particular note. So it was very shocking to this village when this settler began coming around just in the past like 6 months or a year and really began harassing them. Especially just in the past few months, it's really heightened up. They call this settler, he goes by the name of Menahi, they told me. They call him a Bedouin sheikh. They say he is like a Bedouin. He is always on a horse with a gun and he has many cattle with him. And he's like the sheikh of the settlers. He's like the leader of the settlers. So this man will come tromping through their olive groves. They showed me videos where he brought like 80 head of cattle to tromp through the groves, and the cattle were eating the tender olive leaves and the tender olive buds so that they will not have any olive harvest in their vast dunams of olive trees. And he must have brought the cattle extremely hungry because they were just ripping and...
Wow.
Hope you can hear me. I'm just going to keep talking.
There you go. We got you. You're back.
Okay. So they destroyed the olive groves, and this settler also takes the cattle tromping through people's gardens, eating up everything that they have in their vegetable gardens and tromping over everything. So to the point that some of the villagers who have larger tracts of agricultural land, I talked to one of them who fenced his whole garden in, his whole agricultural property, very costly to himself, with a huge fence with rolling barbed wire on the top of it, just to protect himself from the settlers. And he said, I feel like I'm in a prison now when I go onto my land to work it. So this is what was going on in the village. And then just like 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, they came all the way inside the village, not even on the outskirts of it where the agricultural land is, all the way into the heart of the village, to the ruins of this ancient Byzantine church, which is like sacred to the village. Right. And they lit fires all around it as though they were burning. And I showed you one of the pictures where you could see the burned land. This is just one shot. Like, it just goes all the way around this church, and it goes down for several levels of going down the hill, like different areas of it. And they've come back. They've done it like 2 or 3 times around it, even after the priests and the Christians in the village called for international help. The settlers still came in like the next day and did it again. And the reason they're calling for international help is because, like Nassar Farm and like all of these other places, if any of them dare lift a finger to defend themselves, or even look straightforwardly at one of the settlers, they will be attacked. Right. They will be arrested. They will be beaten up. They may even be killed, as that young 20-year-old U.S. citizen was, who was also trying to defend his village from a similar attack. So they know they cannot do one thing. If they
and they'll be branded as the
tip,
instigators too, right, Mercy? I mean, they'll be branded in the media as, hey, they started this, they did this, and it's just,
right. They will be called the terrorists. They will be killed, and they know perfectly well no one will do a thing if they get killed or if they get hauled into jail for defending. So this is why they were loudly like trumpeting, please come help us. And there were so many of us who signed a petition to Mike Huckabee to go check out Taibe. I don't know if that's what helped, but I'm just throwing that out there. When you see these kind of petitions, especially to Mike Huckabee, please make your voice known, because I think it helped. I think that's part of what pushed Mike Huckabee to go out there and see himself what was happening. And I think even Mike Huckabee was astounded by what he saw and heard there in that village. The day after we left the village, the settlers came and took the main spring that feeds the water to the Taibe brewery, that gives Taibe brewery its wonderful flavor. It's a lovely, nice, great beer. But also many other villages around there rely on this spring, not just Taibe. In fact, the settlers had already ethnically cleansed several Bedouin villages living on the outskirts of Taibe and forced them into Taibe land. So now Taibe is no longer like the 100% Christian little village that it used to be, because there are numerous Bedouin whole villages of refugees that are now living with them in the town. So it's already changed what's happening. And those Bedouins will probably, if the trajectory continues as it has, they will never be allowed to go back to their villages, and they will be now living in Taibe. So this is what's happening in Taibe.
Go ahead and finish the thought, though. You were talking about they cut the pipe.
Yes.
Talk about that for a minute.
They cut off the pipe to the spring that was piping water. This is what I understand. You can double check this story. I'm not sure if it was piping water into Taibe or if it was just the main pipe that went to a lot of villages, but they cut it. So all this water is just gushing out, being wasted essentially. And we're talking precious water, right? Because it's been a year of very low rainfall, and the aquifer has gone way down, and plants are stressed because they did not get the usual amount of water. And because the water is such a sensitive issue in terms of even how much Palestinians are allowed versus what Israelis are allowed, to see the pipes cut and that water just gushing off, being wasted. The villagers ran and they fixed the pipe. And as far as I know, the water is still now going back to Taibe. But that happened the day or two after we left and were there. So this shows you there's a certain amount of incorrigibility within the settlers, even though even people like Mike Huckabee have been drawing attention to it. They're still doing these things.
Yeah, I'm going to express a measure of what's the word I want? Not positivity, and I can't think of the word right now. I'm getting old, Danny, but Mike Huckabee, I think, was great. Made a show, made a statement. Cynicism, I guess, is the word I wanted. He has made the statements in the past, even before he was nominated by Trump. He's the American ambassador to Israel. That there's no such thing as the Palestinian territories. There's no such thing as the West Bank. It's all Israel, Judea and Samaria. Palestinians don't know. He believes that all of this land is Israel's. And so the whole idea that Israel has done these things to the Palestinians, I don't see him doing anything about it. I don't see the United States government doing anything about it. And then earlier we were talking about settlements, and you have to understand this is against international law. It's been against international law from the beginning. Every U.S. president, I don't know about Trump, but I think he has, every U.S. president up until Trump at least has condemned, and I don't know about Biden either, has condemned the building of settlements because when you transfer your population into the West Bank, that is the number one reason that you're not going to get a peace deal. Because how can you get a peace deal with two states when one state's not viable because half the people in that state belong to the people of the other state? So settlements are the major obstacle to peace. And every U.S. president has condemned the building of settlements, and Israel has never ceased building settlements, regardless of the U.S. president's threats. So I'm just cynical that it was making a show there, and good because an American citizen died, and so what are we going to do? So, Mercy, you were telling me some stories the other day as we talked a little bit beforehand about your trips into the refugee camps, And there's some
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable stories. I hope you have time. If you're okay, if you have to go, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
But of tragedy, of heartbreak. I mean, these are refugees. These are people that lived in Israel proper that were forced out, or in 48, or that lived in the West Bank areas that became owned by Israel, occupied by Israel, and they were forced out. So the refugees from 67 or from 48. And they're already impoverished. But you also had a really cool story too. So tell us a little bit about your time in some of the refugee camps there.
Sure. I'll close with a beautiful, I mean, it's a sad story, but there's a beautiful lining to it. I went to visit some dear friends who I've known for years. They're a very sweet Muslim family, very, very poor. I mean, they live in a tiny little house in Aza refugee camp, which is right across the street from Bethlehem Bible College. And the father was often selling coffee in the street. He had made very good Arabic coffee, and this was how the family made their living. He is now very ill, and he can't stand and sit to do that work. And his wife is also ill. I had not seen them in some years, but I dropped by to visit them less than a week ago. And when I came in to visit them, I realized that they were very despondent. They didn't have their normal, I mean, they were very happy to see me, but they didn't have their normal vim and zest for life.
Yeah.
And as I began talking to them, they brought me a little plate of cooked, like tiny little noodles, like vermicelli, like chopped up real small, that was like cooked with, it seemed like it was cooked with like sweetened condensed milk or something. It was interesting. And they just set that on the table, you know, because they were being hospitable, and I ate a few bites of it, and I was like, and they said, I'm sorry, we can't bring you any tea. We only have a few drips of water coming from our faucet, and we don't have any tea anyway, or sugar. And I said, you don't have any tea or sugar? And they said, no, it's very, very hard for us right now. We just have no money. We have nothing. And as I began talking to them, they began opening up more to me. And I realized that they actually had like no food in the house at all. They had like, what they served me was the only thing they had in the house to eat. And they had no water. And I'm thinking, this is like Gaza here. They have no food and they have no water right here in this camp. And they told me they had spent that morning praying in desperation, asking God to intervene and help in some way. So they were telling me all this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I happened to have some money, some American US dollars in my wallet that I had been planning to exchange. And I just took that money out and I gave it to them. And I said, please take this. This is a gift from the Lord. You guys have fed me so many iftar meals, like for Ramadan, like so many meals I've eaten on their floor, like sitting on the floor with newspaper spread on the floor, eating like a humble meal, breaking the Ramadan fast with them many, many times. I said, this is something very small. I didn't want them to feel embarrassed. And I ran over to Dukan, like the little grocery store across the street, and I bought them a whole bunch of staples and brought it back to the house. And they just started sobbing. And that's when they told me that they had spent the morning praying and they didn't know how God was going to answer their prayer. And I just kept telling them, God wants you to have this. This isn't from me. This is from God. Please just accept this as a gift from God. God sees you. God knows you. God cares about you. You're not out of his sight. And then I remembered that one time my friend had referred to Jesus as Habibi, which means like my love. And I knew he really loved Jesus. And I said to him specifically, this is from Jesus. And he got this grin on his face. He said, I love Jesus. I said, I remember.
Now, this is a Muslim family though, right? Right. Mercy?
Yes. This is a Muslim family. Yes.
It's a Muslim family. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yes. This is a Muslim family. And he says, yes, I love Jesus so much. I'll tell you why. And he began to tell me a story. I've known this man for years, and I don't know why he never told me this story earlier, but I felt very honored that he shared it with me. He said, when I was a little boy, about 8 or 9 years old, it was Eid, the big holiday, the holiday where every Palestinian family usually buys new clothes. Like this is one of the things that you do. And their family was going through very hard financial times that year, and his mother could not get a new dress. He really wanted his mother to have a new dress. And he didn't have any new clothes for himself, but he was especially sad for his mother because he knew that she would look beautiful in a new dress, and he just felt brokenhearted for her. And he went to bed and he was crying himself to sleep because he felt so sad for his family and sad for his parents and sad for himself. Then he said in the middle of the night, he had this dream that Jesus came to him. And Jesus just appeared to him in the dream, and Jesus was just looking at him and smiling and like beaming and exuding towards him all of this love and all of this peace and all of, the presence of Jesus. I mean, imagine it in full force. This is what this little boy was feeling. And I couldn't quite understand, like, my Arabic's better, but I might have missed a few things, like if Jesus said something to him. I had the impression that Jesus either said it or he knew it, but that Jesus was telling him that I love you. I love you. And he said that Jesus had little tight black curls that came down to his shoulders, black ringlets, he said. And he said that Jesus had a big, like, bushy black beard, like Santa Claus, he said. And he said that there was rain falling around Jesus, and there was water that was dripping down through his hair, like water dripping down through his ringlets, as though Jesus himself was like a fountain of water, as though water was actually flowing out of Jesus. And he said that there was light shining around Jesus. And he said, every time I think about this dream that I had, even to this day, it gives me goosebumps. And he said, this is a dream that has sustained me through many dark times in my life. When I have lost hope or felt discouraged, this dream comes back to me, and I feel the peace of that moment again. And I feel the power of that moment again in my life. And so when I left their home that night, I was walking back to the Bible college. I was just weeping, walking down the street, because I was like, Lord, I knew that you loved them, but I didn't know he was like a special friend of yours. Like, he's a friend, like he's someone that you've known since he was a little boy. Like, this family is so special to you. And you brought me into their life, and like, we've been friends all this time. And I didn't know that the Lord was like, oh, my friend Mercy, meet my friend Fayez. Like, he knew that at some point we would go deeper into our conversations and really find out that I would find out that Fayez was a special friend of Jesus. And I just felt the Lord was like, thank you for caring for my friend Fayez. Thank you. And I was just like, Lord, it happened to be my birthday that day. And I was just like, Lord, I couldn't have asked for a more beautiful birthday present that you would give me than to be able to be there for your friends and to know this about them. It was just so sacred and it was so holy. But what I want to share is that the people in the refugee camps are very, 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 very desperate. I have many friends in the camps, and all of them were sharing with me stories of extreme desperation and fear and stress, not unlike our friends, the Nassars, who live out on the farm, or the people in Taipei. So I want you to really understand that this is across all of every strata of society, whether you're Christian or Muslim or wealthier, a landowner, or whether you're a refugee living in a camp. But I will say that the people living in the camps are probably the most vulnerable of all, as well as people like the Nassars out in Area C, where the settlers are rapidly moving in. But everyone is vulnerable.
Yeah.
Mercy, before I know we're coming to the closer.
That's fine.
Can you give us maybe one or two or three action points for people? What is it, the things that we can do? I think we are all both appalled and moved by these stories. What are some of the action points that we can do? What do you recommend for the average person sitting here in the United States hearing this? How do we respond?
Well, I'm going to jump in first, Danny, and that is, you can support Mercy in her work and the things that she's doing I put up on the screen, and I'll put this in the comments once we're done with the live stream here. This will live on our YouTube channel. Some of you have been asking about that, where you can get access to this. It'll be on the Determined Truth YouTube channel, and I'll put in the comments box here the link for this. But you can support Mercy in her work. She brings people to the land. She does this work. I don't think she told you all the story about what she did, but the money that she gave more money than that to help this family out. She brings people to the land and tells her story. So she works at Peace Catalyst. So Mercy, I interrupted, but go ahead and talk about Peace Catalyst and what you do. You can probably turn your camera on now. I think we're hopefully, if it doesn't work, turn your camera back off. But tell us about your work at Peace Catalyst and Impact Nations and the Shepherd Society.
Yeah, so I'm working. My chair just
you
broke.
okay?
I'm sitting in the hotel. Okay, you guys.
It's a good thing we didn't have the camera on,
because have to see that.
Because I would have made a video clip of that, and that would have been.
Oh my gosh!
Okay,
that was scary.
Danny, we could have been really popular to Determined Truth with that video clip. Are you okay?
Yeah. So I'm working with a humanitarian agency and a local friend in Palestine, and we have ways to purchase food that is inside of Gaza at the very exorbitant prices on the black market. We don't have a way to bring food in. No one does, but we can purchase food that's already available and give it to the most needy and desperate. So if you want to give to that, you can do so through Impact Nations. We are continuing to feed people on a regular basis. As long as there's money coming in for us to do it, and as long as there is any type of food that we can buy anywhere in Gaza, we're going to continue this project. Great. You can also give to the Shepherd Society at Bethlehem Bible College. They not only are helping the poor and needy in Gaza, but also the poor and needy around Bethlehem in particular. And if you heard the story that I just shared about our friends, the refugees, these are some of the desperate people who are also, some of them out of food, out of water. They also are in desperate need of help, and they are being kind of forgotten with the extreme man-made famine that is going on in Gaza, but they need help too. I would also suggest come to Palestine if you can. I'm going to be leading a pilgrimage next year with Peace Catalyst. It will be in conjunction with Christ at the Checkpoint. So it'll be about 12 days before the conference. And so you're welcome to come with us on that. Just reach out to me if you would like to. Come also to Church at the Crossroads, which is going to be in Chicago in September. If you want to connect with other people who are engaged with Israel-Palestine, working for justice so that there can be peace for all. I'm really glad, Rob, that you continued to stress throughout this conversation that Israelis are not going to be safe if Palestinians are not safe. Palestinians need justice, so Israelis can also be safe, so everyone can live together in peace in that land. So come to church.
Comment on the Church at the Crossroads conference. It seems like we have about 5 or 6 organizations that are all deciding to do the conference together as one large conference. So Church of the Crossroads, September 11th through 13th. In Glen Ellen, Illinois. I know Munther Isaac will be there. I know obviously Mercy, myself will be there, but Shane Claiborne will be there. You're looking at a lot of people that are involved in this issue. NEMI, of course, Network of Evangelicals for the Middle East, which is where Mercy and I first met. We will be there. We'll have a presence there. We'll have Gary Burge will be speaking. Lots of speakers. Lots of. I think the conference is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. September 11th through 13th. And so you can find all the information out. Just type in Church of the Crossroads on your browser there. Let me also mention as well, let me stop sharing my screen on that one. And let me share my screen here. Some of it, Mercy's book, we mentioned to you at the beginning, Yet in the Dark Streets Shining. This is one of the best things that you can do, because the thing about the story, it's a story of a Palestinian. Bashar al-Awad started Bethlehem Bible College, and it's his story. And those stories really resonate with people, and telling stories is the best way to get people involved and get them to understand what's going on in the conflict. And then, of course, if one of the issues that happens with this issue, or one of the problems that arises with this issue, is that people have all these theological objections as to why they can't believe this or believe that or do this or do that. So I, of course, written my latest book called Land of Contention. And it talks about the gospel and the kingdom and the role of the church in being peacemakers, but it also responds to the theological issues that people arise. Well, what about the promises that God made to Israel, that the land belongs to them? And then Mercy's talking about the conference in Bethlehem next year, So that means, Mercy, that your trip there will be in May of 2026. Is that what
Yes.
you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So
yeah. So, and of course, also continue to reach out to your representatives, make
yeah,
your
you
voice.
have to.
Yes.
You know,
You have
I
to.
mean,
You
at
have
the
to.
very least, demand for infant formula, and
Yep.
that the peanut plumpy, it's something that's created for like children in famine areas. It can save lives. If we could get that stuff, even just that stuff, into Gaza right now, we could save many, many lives of children.
Yeah.
So really lift your voices, make them heard, reach out, use your voice before humans, legislators, before God, before your other people that you know, people in church. Speak up, speak out as much as you can.
Yeah. And also, of course, subscribe to the Determined Truth YouTube page. We have I work together in conjunction with another organization called Christian Forum on Israel Palestine. We have a couple live streams coming up in early May. We don't have the flyers for those available just yet, but I think it's early August. I think it's like August 8th or something like that. We're going to continue having these conversations. All that lives on the Determined Truth YouTube page, the Christian Forum on Israel Palestine, CFIP YouTube page there as well. You can go to the Determined Truth blog. I've got hundreds of blogs on this issue. I've got several of them on Daoud Nassar. So I think if you type in Daoud Nassar on my Patheo site, you'll get articles on him. Obviously, type in Daoud on YouTube and find out all the wonderful things about this amazing man and his family there. I want to make a couple people have put some comments in. So I think Kevin is absolutely correct. He comments that Mike Huckabee is expressing concern exclusively over the abuse of Christians in Israel and none for the abuse of Muslims and others is profoundly un-Christian. Huckabee merely reinforced the false and toxic notion that the U.S. is a Christian nation and reinforces the plain fact that the U.S. is an ally to Israel. So thanks, Michael Thomas, he was moved by your story about the Muslim boy and many others as well. We thank you for your time and attention. And Mercy, thank you so much. Danny,
yes, thanks so much,
I think
Mercy.
let's close in prayer. And you're the senior leader amongst us all, Danny.
No, I'm a learner. Mercy, I appreciate so much you giving us your time.
Yeah, Mercy, turn your camera back on if you can for the last, unless it's not appropriate because your chair broke.
I'll turn it on, but I may lose my voice. Let's see.
Okay.
Let's see what happens.
There you go.
Hi, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Danny's going to close us in prayer.
Lord, the first thought that comes to my mind as we pray is, Lord, have mercy.
Amen.
Have mercy on all of us for our lack of empathy or understanding the depth of what's going on in that precious part of our world that has so much history for our faith and for your activity, God. We ask in Jesus' name that you would bring an end to this, that people, wise and just oriented people, would somehow their voices would raise within that whole area of Palestine, Israel. Somehow, God, that you would bring peace, that you would protect the innocent, bring justice to those who have been unjustly harmed and are being oppressed. And Lord, stir our own hearts to action, that we might wisely and passionately engage in any way that we can to help those who are suffering. Lord, we just cry out to you for a just and merciful end to this conflict and to the misery and the injustice that's going on and sometimes going on in your name, or often in your name. And we repent of that. And we pray that you would bring those of us in the American church to that place of repentance and action to stand for the marginalized, the vulnerable, the victims of this violence. And God, that you would help us to be ministers of a just peace as well. Thank you for Mercy. Bless her efforts. Keep her safe. Provide what she needs. And as she ministers and connects and works in this area of the world, would you use her mightily as you already have? And Lord, would thank you for her giving her time to us today. So Lord, just take us from here and help us to be ongoingly engaged in all of this. And we just thank you for all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Mercy, Bruce and I mentioned to Bruce about taking a trip over as well. So maybe Bruce and I either will get our trip, a separate trip with Bruce and myself. And you can email me at rob@determinedtruth.com if you're interested in going with myself, or maybe we'll combine with your group. I don't know how that, if that's a possibility.
Great.
But
yeah.
All right. I will definitely see you in September. If we don't talk before then, I'm sure that we will. And thank you everybody for paying attention and following along.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.